All right, so today we are talking about automation in Pro Tools. And basically what automation does is it allows you to record, edit, play, volume, mute, pan, and other parameter changes into the track so they will happen automatically during playback. Back before automation, back before people were using Pro Tools, this is like up until the late 90s or so, the way you would do automation is as you were recording the track, your stereo bounce, you'd have your 24-track tape, and it would have all the different instruments on it, and that would play back. You'd be recording that to a stereo tape, and as you would play it, you would just turn the volume up on some tracks and turn it down on other tracks and pan things left and right, stuff like that. And really, you would have to have you and a few friends in there or the musicians in there to really work the mix in real time. And that's what you would have to do. You'd have to go through and take notes and say, okay, in the chorus, I want the guitars to come up, I want the vocals to come down, I want the drums to come forward a little bit, stuff like that. And as you would play back the track, you would turn the guitars up, you would turn the vocals down, you'd turn the drums, whatever you wanted to do, and you'd do it. And if you made a mistake, you'd have to go back and do it again. And it wasn't super easy to do. You're basically performing the track. So this is what automation helps us with in Pro Tools, Logic, stuff like that. If we go into a Pro Tools session, and what I'm working with right now, and what we're going to be working with in the assignment today, our lesson today, is going to be using the Sharp Hand Joe drum track again, with all those plugins and stuff in it. And in here, we're going to work in automation again. And what we've got here is, here's my track, and if I want to see my automation lane, the way I do it is right over here in the track header. Oh wait, you know what? I got a special surprise for y'all. I almost forgot. Boom! Look at that! Now you can see my cursor. Yeah, how do you like that, Crispy and AJ? I listened to your advice. Uh-huh. Yeah, now you can't miss my cursor. All right. Now that we're cooking with fire, I'm going to go in here, and so right here, where it says waveform right here, click on that, and down here you've got your automation lanes. These automation lanes are right here, volume, mute, pan, and this one has a send effect on it as well. So if I want to adjust my volume level of my kick drum, I click on this, and it changes my kick drum to a line here, and this line has my automation. This is my automation. So if I want to adjust the volume of my kick drum, I have a couple ways I can do it. First of all, if I have my smart tool turned on, right here's my smart tool right here, and if I have that turned on by clicking this little button right here, boom, click that on, I can adjust my volume here in a couple of ways. First of all, if I hold down the command key, it turns into a finger here. See that? It's a little finger. Click on that and it puts a point, and I can click somewhere else and put a point, and now I can move that point up and down like that. Okay. If I want to get rid of this point, I hold down my option and it turns into a little minus sign, and I click it and it gets rid of the point. See that? Getting rid of the point there. So that's how we can, that's one way we can do automation on here. So let's say, for example, I'm playing my track here, and let's say right here, let me go ahead and turn my grid to a higher setting. If I get to right here and I want my kick drum to come down in volume for this section, what I did was I just highlighted between the triplet here, this part here, and the ride symbol. And I highlight this with my selector tool in the top half of the screen or the middle of the screen. And I go up and I can click and drag down. And see how that turns into like a little staple? See, that's a little staple there? I can click and drag down on it and it will just lower the selected part there. So if I start over here, see how it's a little bit softer? and it gets a little bit louder right there. All right, and we could do that with any kind of track. So for example, if I turn my overheads, here's my overheads right here, I can change this, click on the waveform thing over here, and click on that and change this to volume, and now my overhead, which is a stereoed file here, will change to a volume track, and I can just go in here and highlight what I want to adjust the volume on and bring it down. The other way I can do it is I could put a point here by holding down Command and click, and another point here by holding down Command and click, and kind of drag these down like this. This is the hard way to do it. I don't really recommend doing it this way, but you can do it this way. And now, so see how it's loud? The hi-hat is loud right there. Now the hi-hat's a little bit quieter. I can make it even quieter by clicking and dragging down even more. See how it changes the sound? Now it comes back up in volume. I'm just going to go ahead and undo that. So just to review that one more time, two ways you can do volume changes is you hold down your command button when you're in the Smart tool, and it turns into a plus sign, and it puts in a little point, and now you can adjust between those 2 points like that. Or if I have a section that I want to adjust the volume level on, I highlight, I drag across with my selector tool, and then I just mouse up and it turns into a little staple thing, and I drag it down or up. I can drag it down and up, and it will adjust that level there. All right, so that's basically the overview of automation. If you want to draw it in like this, this is the quickest way to do it. If I want to do a line or something, I can also use my pencil tool here, up here in the top. Pencil tool, click and drag down. I have all these shapes that I can do, lines, triangles, squares, things like that. If, for example, I want to use my line tool, I can just go in here and I just click and drag, and it's a line, and I can drag it around like this. So I can make fades up and down and stuff like that. That's one way to do all that stuff, okay? And there's some other cool things about the pencil tool. We'll come back and talk about that in just a minute. No, the pencil tool, you do not hold command. You only just click and drag. Yep, command is only for the points. Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Okay. So just one quick thing I just want to show you in this picture here. When we're looking at our track view here, if you notice the top part here, none of these are up here. These are not automation. These green ones down here are all your automation ones. Volume, mute, pan, and then these here are if you have a send effect or something on there. So the automation views, the ones over here, only appear when you've got track sends or plugin parameter auto enabled. Volume, mute, and pan are always going to be on your track, but there's other stuff that will show up depending on what you have, what effects you have, or if you have sends or not on your track. Okay, so we just talked about one way to do automation, that's to draw it in. So you can draw the automation in, but you can also record it in real time, and you can use a controller to do that. If you have a Pro Tools controller, you can draw it in by touching something, or you can draw it in by using your mouse on the screen. So let's just talk about recording automation here for a second. The different automation modes that we have in the track are read, write, touch, and latch, and they're all right over here. So go back to my kick drum, and I click here where it says read, this green one right here. See, that says read. Click on that, and we have off, which doesn't follow any automation. It doesn't let you record, it doesn't play it, nothing. It's just off for the track. We have read mode. Read mode, you can draw the automation like I just showed you, but you can't record it in. So you can go ahead and change things around, but you cannot record it in. touch mode, latch mode, and write mode, these are all record automation modes. Touch and latch are very similar, and write is a little bit different, but they all allow you to record automation in. So let's go ahead and talk real quick about these three automation record modes. Okay, so they're all right down here in the notes. Touch only records the parameter you were touching, and it stops recording when you stop touching that parameter. So for example, if I've got put my smart tool back on, I'm going to delete that automation point. I'm going to put my thing into touch mode here, right over here on the left-hand side. Click that touch mode, and now I've got my fader here like this. So if let me go ahead and pull this out real quick. So I've got my fader for my track here. And you can see if I adjust that, it moves that line up and down. See how this line, I want you to pay attention to this line right here. This line, the automation line here. If I move the fader down, it pulls that line down as well. That line is a representation of where my fader is. So if I hit play, and it's important to remember when you have touch mode, if you have any kind of latch or auto or anything like that on, you don't have to hit record, you just have to hit play. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to hit play. Hold on a second, let me just move that over. Okay. Come on. So it's not doing anything right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this down and turn it back up. And you see that red line that's appearing? That's me writing the automation in. When I let go, it stops writing the automation. See that? It's not writing automation now. If I go ahead and turn it up, and I let go, see what happens when I let go? It goes ahead and puts it back to where my original automation lane was. Now let's say I wanted to do that again. I want to write in some different automation. If I'm in touch mode, watch what happens when I let go. So I'm holding, I'm just not doing anything right now. And I turn it down, and I turn it back up, and watch, I'm going to let go. Immediately, my automation line goes back to whatever I had recorded previously. That's what touch mode does. Touch mode is recording when you're touching it. When you got your mouse down or when you're touching the controller, it's recording. But as soon as you let go, it's going to stop recording. Now with different controllers, this works a little bit differently. If you have a recorder, a controller that's touch capacitive, which means that it can just sense when you're touching it. And this is actually pretty old technology. I know it sounds pretty magical, but it's old technology. It just uses the electric current that we have in our bodies, and when you touch something, it just kind of knows that you touch it because it's like metal or something like that. So when you touch it, it'll automatically start writing. When you let go, it'll stop writing. That's what touch mode does. Now if I change it here it is right here. If I change this to latch mode, it works basically the same way, but it's a little bit different. So it's still going to be recording as I'm touching it, but when I let go, that's when it changes. So when I let go, it's going to keep recording at the same level as where I let go. So let's just check out that note real quick. Latch only records the parameter you are touching, and it continues recording when you stop touching the parameter. So it's only going to record that one parameter that you're touching, but it's going to continue recording when you let go, but in a straight line. So watch this. We're still using the kick drum here. This is the fader for the kick drum, so watch what happens. It's not recording anything, and now I can drag this down a little bit, and when I let go, it stays there, and it's recording in a straight line. And this is really useful if you want to find a level of something and you want to keep it at that level. So if you're like, you know what, I want to check out the level of that kick drum and I just want to keep it at that level. I don't want it to go up and down. I don't want it to move anywhere. I just want to keep it at that level so I can, now I let go and I can record some of this time here. And what I can do is I can actually delete all these extra data points here by clicking and dragging across like this with my selector tool. And I hit delete, and it gets rid of all of those automation points. Okay, so if you want to get rid of the automation points, like a group of them, you select across them, you highlight them like this, and you hit delete, and it gets rid of them. So that's what we can do, and I can also delete stuff backwards over here, like this. Whoops, let's see, that was not what I wanted to do. Let's go ahead and let's see. Here, we'll do it like this. And I'll just drag this down. So you can see sometimes it's a little bit weird working with automation here. I'm kind of messing around with it a little bit, but generally it's pretty good. So that's our touch and latch modes. So touch and latch modes, they only will record 1 or 2 parameters at a time, whatever you can be touching with your hands. Not every parameter. Write mode will record every single parameter that you have auto-enabled. So in this case, right now we've got volume, mute, pan, and we've got level and mute and pan for our buses 1 and 2, for our bus 1 and 2. So if I go ahead and hit write mode, turn write mode on, and hit go, notice how it's just recording automatically. I'm not touching anything, I'm not doing anything, it's just recording. And if I change to look at my pan, or my mute, or my pan, whatever, it's also recording the panning. And my mute, I can mute things and unmute it. Okay, so that's how that works there. Everything is being recorded at the same time as one pass. So you have to be a little bit careful when you're recording, when you're using write mode. Oh man, hold on a second. Get back there. There we go. You have to be a little bit careful when you're using write mode because it might overwrite something that you didn't mean to overwrite. If you want to use write mode, it might go ahead and cancel out something that you didn't want to cancel out or something like that. So you have to be careful when you're using write mode. So let's say, for example, that I've recorded in my volume. Let's go ahead and record in some volume stuff here. I'm going to use touch mode. So I've used touch mode here, and you can see I've recorded all this stuff into it. Now, if I like that volume and I really don't want to overwrite it, and I want to be careful that I don't overwrite it ever. AJ, yeah, Command Z is my best friend when I make mistakes. Yep, Command Z is awesome. So what I can do, if I want to make sure that I basically lock that automation in place for all my tracks, and I know that I don't want to record any more volume automation, or if I want to be careful, I can go here to my window, and I go in here to automation here, open that window, automation window, and see how it's got all of these things here. Plug-in volumes, S volume, send volume, send mute, send pan, and regular volume, mute, and pan, all these here. What I can do is I just click on the volume one, and I turn that off, and that means that it's not going to record automation into any volume at all. So I could go ahead and I can hit play. I'm in touch mode, and if I move it around, it's not going to record that automation. If I go over here to my pan, it will record the panning automation. Or if I mute, if I go back here and I look at my pan, volume, and mute, it'll record all this stuff in. My panning is here, or my mute is here, my panning is here, and it recorded all that stuff in, but it did not record my volume changes in. So if you want to basically make sure that something won't be recorded, you just turn it off here in your automation window here. You can also suspend all the automation so it's not going to record or write or play anything. It's not going to pay any attention to the automation at all for anything. And you can do that right here. That's a quick thing here. Yes, you can record automation through the mixer window as well. Yep. I'm just showing it in here so we can see it, but it all works the same in the mixer window. Now, a cool thing you can do if you wanted to is turn all this automation on rather. Get rid of all this. One thing real quick is here, if we look at this over here on the left, see my cursor over here on the left, you can see that these are white up here. Well, they're not, I mean, they're always going to be white here, but these here, let me just undo one thing real quick. So in here, my volume is orange and my mute and pan are white here, and the reason why the volume turned orangey yellow is because this has automation data on it. That's why it's orange. So if you ever want to find where you've done some volume automation stuff, it's right here. It's in orange. Okay. So once again, I'm just gonna double click this one too here, and it highlights everything. If I had some automation over here as well, and I want to get rid of it all, I can double click. It's gonna just do this part here just for that clip. But if I triple click, remember the triple click thing, 1, 2, 3, it'll highlight any automation that's on my track, and I can just hit delete and it will get rid of it. So there we go, there's that. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit. Oops, undo that. Let's turn this back to read mode. There we go. So what I can do here is I can change all my tracks to say volume here. So they're all volume, and I can pull up my mixer window, and I'm just going to put my mixer window over here on the side, just so we can see that I can do everything with my mixer window here, and put all of these here into auto touch. Just do auto touch here, and now I hit play. Well, actually, let's use auto latch. There we go. And now I've just recorded all those volume changes in there. So if we hit play, you can see everything moving over here on the right side of my screen. Everything follows those changes that I made. And you can see here at the end, it kind of goes back suddenly. If I want to get rid of that and make sure it doesn't go back, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down my minus key on these and get rid of the point where it goes back to. So now it's just going to be a straight line. There we go. Boom. So you can see how everything moves around. You can see how you can see everything on here. So hopefully you get the idea of how this automation stuff works. And it's just a matter of practicing with it. So this here is a little drawing about that. It kind of explains touch versus latch a little bit better. So the blue line is my original automation and the pink line is my recording automation that I'm recording in now. So touch mode what it does is the original automation is overwritten by new data. So when I'm touching it, I'm touching it, I'm touching it, I'm touching it, I stop touching it here, and now from here, it goes back to the previously recorded data. As opposed to latch mode, I'm overwriting, I'm overwriting, I'm overwriting, and I stop touching it, and now it just continues in a straight line until I stop playback. And that's the big difference between these here. All right, now one preference that I recommend that you change in Pro Tools, go into my preferences here, under Setup, Preferences, and in here, oh, hold on a second, let me turn these off so we don't have them on top of everything. Okay. So in here, go to Menu, go to Setup Preferences, Mixing and Automation. And this is going to be after write pass, switch to that. So after write pass, switch to touch mode. That's what I recommend using, is always use touch mode. So in here, we're going to go into our preferences. We're going to go to Mixing. We're going to go to Automation. And in here, over here on the right-hand side, after write pass, switch to touch mode is what you wanted to switch to, is what I recommend. What this does is when you write automation, after you hit stop or after it loops back through, if you have a loop set up, it's going to change this. It's not just going to stay in write mode, because if you just stay in write mode, it would automatically just write over everything you just did. So what happens is it changes to latch mode by default, but I recommend changing that to touch mode, because realistically, probably touch mode is what you're going to be wanting to use most of the time. So once again, we go to Setup, go to Preferences, in here go to Mixing, and then after write mode, write pass, switch to touch. And what this does, is if I loop this first, let's loop these first two bars. Yeah, 4 bars. If I loop these first 4 bars and I'm in write mode here with my kick drum, when it loops through, see how it just changed to touch mode over here? And it kept my automation in, and now if I want that automation to change, I can use touch mode, and every time it loops back around, it just stays in touch mode. Okay, and that's what that does, because you don't want it to stay in write mode. That would overwrite everything again, which would be awkward. All right, so in Pro Tools, automation is king. If you have any automation data on a track, that parameter is no longer editable unless you edit the automation data itself. And here's the little shortcuts for us: Command click or Option click. Command click is adding points, and Option click is removing points. And this is all with the Smart tool. Smart tool. Okay, so let me just show you what I mean by this. If I have any automation points on a track at all, even if, like over here, I have an automation point, click. Say I just put an automation point right there. And that automation point is just over here at bar 7. It's not anywhere near the beginning, but watch what happens. If I open up my fader here, and I try to adjust the automation, adjust the volume on that kick drum, watch what happens. I pull it down, and I let go. It automatically goes back up. But we haven't crossed that automation point. Well, the reason why is because as soon as you put any automation onto a track in Pro Tools, it's automatically going to be automated. It's just going to be there with the automation. So automation is king. And this is, if you use Ableton Live, this is the opposite of Ableton Live. In Ableton Live, automation is not king. Automation is there, and you can mess around with it at any time. You can change it at any time, and whatever you change is going to take over from your automation lane. So it's the opposite. If you're using Logic, Logic and Pro Tools are the same. Automation is king in both of those. You can copy, paste, or duplicate automation data. So for example, if I have, let's go down here to my overhead. And actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna use a different automation. Let's skip ahead here for a second and go back to our plugins, okay? And this is something that I showed you, and I'm showing you this right now because I want to use this in showing you the copy and paste. So remember, when you're automating plugins, you have to tell the plugin what parameter you want to automate, okay? So if I go over here to my drum group, and let's see here, not that. I want to see all my inserts, my sends. There we go. So my drum group here, I've got my my compressor. I'm going to go ahead and put a filter on it. So I'm going to click on here and put a multi-channel filter. And we're going to use the one that comes with Pro Tools under modulation and vintage filter right here. So I'm going to click on that, and now there it is on my screen. So I can adjust my cutoff, turn my resonance down. There we go. That's this knob right here, cutoff. So I have that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and record this in. I'm going to change this to touch mode. I'm going to record in some filter sweeps. I'm going to go like this, leave it up at the top here, and I'm going to click and drag it down. And see how nothing happened, right? Nothing happened right there. So what I need to do is I need to go in here and I need to auto-enable that filter cutoff. That's right here, cutoff filter, double click that, and now it ends up on this right hand side over here. Hit OK, and now if I go look, so first of all, two things have just happened. One, it gets a little red dot next to it, which means it's auto enabled. And two, if I click on my volume lane over here, what I'm looking at in my drum group, now I get this new one down here that says the plugin name and the parameter that we just auto-enabled. So I can see that parameter right there. I can see it now in this line, and if I click and I use touch mode now, it'll record it in. Okay, so I just recorded that in there. So let's listen to that. Great. Now, if I wanted to repeat that filter every time, I can just use my Smart Tool with the selector mode and drag across, hit Command C to copy, and now I can just copy it in over here like this. And we'll just do that automatically that time for those times that it's here. You can see it right here on my screen. And if I wanted to, I can just highlight it, drag across, and hit Command D, and that will duplicate it over like this. Awesome. Yeah, cool. And again, if I want to delete all that, I just click and drag and hit delete, and it deletes it all. Now, one thing I want to bring your attention to is what I just said earlier about automation is king. If I turn this to write mode here, or read mode rather, and I start messing around with it, As long as I'm clicking and holding down, it'll be okay. But as soon as I let go, it's going to follow that automation again. So if I wanted to put a straight line in here, let's say I just wanted to like come down to here, then what I would have to do is I can put it in slip mode over here and click and drag where I want it to be a straight line and just hit delete, and it will just delete all those points to the right. Or I could use latch mode and just click and hold it and now let go, and it will just latch it in at that straight point. Like that. Now I can just highlight any of this here and hit Command D and duplicate it across like that. So that's how you can kind of work with these things to get this working right. So now I would have this like down filter. Cool, and it works. All right, so there's that there. Just a quick review of it. Remember, auto enable allows you to automate plugin parameters within the plugin. You must enable parameters in Pro Tools in order to automate them. Auto enable plugins, when you auto enable parameter, a green dot or box appears in the native plugins. Third-party plugins don't always work like that. Remember, you do have the claw for the native plugins. So for example, this plugin here is a native plugin. So if I wanted to automate my resonance here, notice how it doesn't have a dot here. Let me just make this dot to be green. So I'm going to change it to read mode. Now that dot up here on the cutoff is green. So if I have resonance, if I want to add resonance as a automatable parameter, I can use my claw, the 3 fingers, Control, Option, Command, and click it, and it pulls this little dialog up. It says, do you want to enable it? Yes, I do. And now that one turns green as well. And any of these parameters in here, I can click on them and auto enable them. Boom. Okay. Okay. So that's how you would work that there. And we can automate. Now we can automate any one of these. And if I go over here to my window, down here in the left-hand corner, the cutoff, now the vintage filter now has cutoff, resonance, and LFO depth. And we can see that the cutoff is orange because it has automation data on it, but resonance does not have any automation data. If I look at my resonance there, boom, or if I look at my LFO depth, it doesn't have anything. Okay, so you claw click, Control Option Command on a parameter to quickly enable it, and then the auto enable click the auto enable button to enable or disable all parameters simultaneously. What that means is up here on where it says auto here, if I want to turn all my parameters on or off, I just hold down Control Option Command and click on this button here, and it turns them all on or all of them off. If I try to turn them off when I have some automation data on the track, it'll give me this warning: one or more controls that are about to be removed contain automation data. Removing this controls will delete the automation. Are you sure you want to do it? It's not undoable. You can't undo it. Yes, I'm sure I want to do it. Hit Command, hit the remove button, and now it'll disable all the automation on there. Cool. Okay, so you can copy, paste, or duplicate automation data, what I just showed you. You can also double click with the selected tool to select, with the select tool to select all the automation within a clip on the visible lane. It doesn't select stuff on an invisible lane. And if you triple click with select tool, it will select all the automation on the track on the visible lane. If you wanted to automate your data for multiple points at the same time, you have to copy the clip over. Oops. So what I can do is my kick drum here, if I wanted to grab all the automation data within it, I have to go over here to where it says waveform and then grab that clip, and it will grab everything in. And this is like a little bit annoying because you don't always want to have the same audio. But if you have the automation data, you have a whole bunch of points of automation data, you really have to grab that clip. So you'd have to grab the audio with it. Okay, the automation window, it just shows you here. Use this window to turn automation writing off for certain parameters. Red equals the parameter can be written, and gray equals the parameter will not be written. So gray is off and red is on, and it's red to warn you, hey, you're going to automate this parameter. Okay, a couple of tips and tricks with automation. Always insert the first and last automation points first, then insert the adjustment point. So what this means is, if I go down here, and I've got my filter on. Let's go to my filter. Whoop, not that one. This one here. And I'm going to turn this on here. There we go. And I say, you know what I want to do? I want to automate the cutoff. So here's my cutoff. And I want to just slowly adjust that filter up until here, until bar 17 here. So what I can do is at bar 17, I want it to go back to its original filter level, its cutoff level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a point here in the end, and I've already got a point here in the beginning. And now I'm just going to drag down like this, somewhere in the middle. I held down Command to do that. And you notice that it goes back to this point here. Let's say, for example, let me just do one more example of that. I'm going to put my original filter here. So it sounds like this. Now let's say that over time I want to go up to all the way up. So I click with my command tool and I drag it up. And then I want to go back down to where it started. So I can click here and drag it down, and I can mouse over this one to see. If I click on it, it says 2.54. I can click on this one, say, oh, 2.54. Okay, cool. I eyeballed it and it was right. And then I want it to go down over here like this, and I want it to come back up to 2.54. And now you notice we've got there, well, it doesn't really go back exactly to 2.54, but close enough. And that works. Like you can see, I can do it, but it's not the easiest way to get back to our original starting point. So I'm just going to Command Z to undo all this stuff here. If smooth 2.54. If I want to go back to my original starting point, what I do is I'm going to put what I call locking points in. And this is just something I've just done it for a number of years, and I just kind of learned how to do it, where you put a point in the beginning and you put a point at the end, and it locks those 2 points in place, and then you move the middle point around. So let's say that at bar 3, I want to start here at 2.54, and I go, let's say at bar 13, I want to go back to 2.54, so I put a point in there, and somewhere in the middle, I want it to change down here like this. So now I've locked a point in the beginning and the end, so I know it's going to go back to that same point, and now I can make adjustments. I can make adjustments to the middle. You can hear the cutoff. If I open up the plugin, you can see what it's doing here. Doesn't seem to move when I have my zoom tool on here like this. And if I want to delete all these, I can just highlight over them and hit delete. All right. So that's what you do. You make the adjustment, the locking points first, and then you do the adjustment point last in the middle. All right. So one last trick here about doing volume automation and this is specific to volume automation. It's oftentimes easier, I think, to do the volume automation with your trim plugin, not on the track fader. So first of all, what we want to do is we want to put our volume automation at the end of everything, because if you automate the volume in the beginning here, it's going to automate going into your compressors and your distortion and stuff like that, and it changes the sound slightly. So always do your volume automation at the end, and that's where the volume automation is anyway, in the grand scheme of things. So we want to make sure we do our volume automation at the end, and let me go ahead and do this with my kick track over here. So if I want to do volume automation, I just showed you how to do it on the channel itself, but I don't ever actually do that because I don't want my faders moving all around. It looks kind of fun, and it's kind of, you know, fun to do it, but it kind of messes with our mix a bit. So what I do, in order so I can still mix properly later on, what I do is I don't use volume over here. I don't use this volume here. What I do is I put a trim plugin at the end of all my plugins, and the trim plugin has to be other and multi-mono. So if I were to do it on my drum group down here, I click on it, and I have to go to multi-mono plugin, and in multi-mono, other, go to trim right here, shows you where it is. So I have this one here. So I'm going to go back to this one up here, my kick drum, and I'm going to open up my trim plugin, and I'm going to put it at plus or minus 12, or plus 12 rather, because that's what the original track is at. And then in here, I want to automate this parameter right here. It's only got one parameter. I just want to automate this gain. So in order to do this, I hold down my claw, Control, Option, and Command, click on it, and hit Auto Enable. Boom. There we go. Now it turns green right there. Now I can do any automation on this plugin. I just go over here to where my kick drum says waveform over on the left-hand side and drag this down until I see my trim plugin, and I go to my gain. Now I would do my automation in here. So if I want the kick drum to get quieter over these two bars 3 and 4, I can just click and drag it down. And I want it to come back up to my original point. So I'm just going to click right here and put a point in there and drag this down like this. Now let's listen to this. There you go. And you can see how that works there. And this is a volume automation. But let's say, for example, that I have my kick drum and I do some things to it like this. And it sounds fine. I like my automation that I've done on it, the volume levels, but overall the kick drum is a little bit quiet. So this is why I'd use the trim tool, is because I've got my trim tool here with my volume automation on it, but my volume fader is over here. I still have that available to make overall changes to my kick drum level. So I can turn my kick drum up overall, but it's still going to do these adjustments. So I'm saying, oh, in general, my kick drum is too loud, so I'll turn it down a little bit. And I can still adjust my kick drum like this. So this becomes a relative volume change. Now, in Logic, they have absolute versus relative volume changes. So you can have absolute, which would be the fader over here, which would be your fader here, or relative, which would be my trim tool here. And you can make those adjustments like that in Logic. But in Pro Tools Ultra or Pro Tools HD has that as well. But the home version of Pro Tools does not have that. So you really need to use this to get that result. I also recommend using it for Ableton Live. Ableton Live is another one that does not have that feature, so I recommend using it for Ableton Live as well. Same exact thing, just using in Ableton Live, it's your utility tool. Okay, let's go ahead and take a break. Let's take just a quick break, 5-minute break, go stretch your legs, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about automation snapshots, which is pretty cool, and the automation safe button, which we talked about a little bit here, and we'll come back and talk about that pencil tool. All right, so we're going to do all this stuff after the break. We're going to take a little 5-minute break here. All right.